Hello, hi, my name's Fond. Welcome back. I believe this is the 14th DM Diary for the Throne of Rihdar, the game I run, host, and play with my friends every Saturday at 11 a.m. now. It's the time over on twitch.tv/Fond the Jester. Feel free to come watch us, or you can watch the VODs that we upload, or I upload, on my YouTube channel. They're unedited, but they're there if you wish to watch them, or you can watch us live. Either way. Or not watch it all, I guess. No, it really doesn't matter if no one ever watches it. It's for me and my friends, and for whenever I'm an old man and I get to look back at my YouTube channel and see all these videos and think about the fun I had playing D&D. Anyway, without the mojo hojo, let's talk a little bit about this 14th session of the Throne of Rihdar and what had happened. Honestly, I had expected the party to leave Maplewood pretty early. I think we played this game a little bit shorter. I think we played only 4 hours, I think. But they had more or less got to a point where they were just going to go to the church, go see a farmer, try and get some horses, and leave. So to me, I was like, they're not going to be in this town much longer. Once they leave, though, I'm going to call the session because I don't have any prep really made. So I was expecting it to be a very short session. As per always, it was not. I should be learning my lesson. I had prepared no more than 2 weeks worth of content, and it's lasted us 2 months because they've decided to do everything, or I guess they've kind of decided to do everything. More or less, I put everything in front of them, and they ended up, to some extent, doing everything in the town. Now, they go to the Temple of Avost, the god. I suppose I can talk a little bit about him. The Temple of Avost is the only church inside Maplewood. It's ran by Father Caban, the priest of Avost. And they go there very quickly. They open the door, and they more or less what happens is they learn a lot about Avost and what's going on with Quentin Tiest, the poor farmer's father, because he had asked previously for Father Caban to be assassinated because he would not let his father's spirit go on. So none of them, losing Stavros, the party leader, also the paladin, none of them really have a super good or deep understanding of what it means to be a follower of Vost or what the religion is. So they go there and they inquire with Father Taban about who Quentin Tiest, his father Robert, is, and he kind of explains to them what happens is Ravost is a god of combat and war and warriors. More or less, all of them believe in honor and fighting, and they all have a goal that they protect and they die for. And whenever they die, this is one of the very few religions inside of the world of Orbitus that do this, but they bury the bodies. Because if a body cannot walk and return to the reins or be cremated, they will turn into an undead. And people don't like undead, so it's very rare for them to be undead. But all the followers of Ravost, once they die, they are buried, and they become hallowed guardians. These undead are then eventually risen out, basically dug out of the grave, and they're sent off into battle to die again. And once they die a second time, they will finally be able to send their spirit up to Galatea and be reincarnated. So his father, the reason he can't be sent off, they learn, is that there is no way for Father Caban to... There's nothing to fight. There's nothing for him to send them off, and he can't just send them off nowhere. So until someone finds a proper expedition to send these Hollow Guardians on, he can't do it. And it needs to be approved by the churches, because you have to have a certain amount of paladins and clerics and basically clergymen to ensure that whenever the Hollow Guardians go out, they don't go awry and they attack innocent. And if they survive their battles, they have to be guided back until they finally can find another battle and die in. So there's a lot of things that are happening that they're realizing, oh, this is why. It's not that he's trying to keep Quentin Tiest's body here, has Quentin mates. He's not trying to prevent him from going on. If anything, Father Caban seems happy. He talks about how he's happy that the war's coming and stuff, because it might give them a chance to finally allow these guardians to continue on. So they kind of realize that this is less of a situation of hatred between them, and more it's just not possible. And if they want to help him, they either need to kill his father themselves, or they need to find a way to make an expedition. Knowing this, they eventually leave. Father Caban, he kind of gets some money out of them for donations, kind of against their will, but he kind of strong arms them a little bit and gets some donation money. And as they leave, he says, may you be in his wake, or may you follow his wake. And what I learned this session was, it's knowing the religion of your world is one thing, because obviously Father Caban would use all of this lingo of a priest of Ravost that the party doesn't know. So I had to use all this lingo, and I'd come with these lingo like, follow your wake is a saying that they say to other people, saying basically follow in the wake of Ravost, follow your ambitions and honor, and, chase after your dreams and desires and actually make something of it. So he says that to them and some other lingo. And eventually they also, one thing that's important, they also saw the nameless king, which is a statue that looks over the cemetery, and on top of its head is a golden crown. And they realize that this is likely the crown that Lollyhops, the seventh Frogolian, the leader of the Frogolians in the Maplewood Marshes, this is likely the crown that he was looking for to be able to potentially do the ritual to make him Frogolian king. So they have found another piece of, the clue for the quest here. But realizing it's kind of futile, they go and they find Quentin Tiest. They go to his house. Quentin Tiest is, as always, kind of crying and sad and bashful and stuff. And they more or less talk to him, and they realize he has no horses, he has nothing. And they get kind of mad and kind of insult him and stuff, and he starts crying. And because he's really a wimp. He's a big wimp of a farmer, and these people are scary, and he's scared of them. And they meet his daughter, and they meet his wife. And what ends up happening is, I can't remember what it is. Oh yes, Kira ended up being drunk, tried to give a potion of plant growth, which is actually a really damn good potion, to him, which he ended up rejecting, which I probably could have taken it, but I didn't think he would take it. And also, it's a really good item I didn't just want to take, even though it was offered. I just put that back, and in return, Kira gave him 5 silver Dawkins, to which Hawkins took that back. And then they end up getting into a little quarrel about if they should give him money or not out of pity and things of the such. But eventually they end up paying him because he tells them where they can find some horses. To a farmer named Jim Holland, he may have some horses. And they kind of leave him be. And after this whole encounter, a lot of role play and stuff, and really sad. Obviously, he's so pitiful, telling them to, just kill his father or something. But they go off to Jim Holland. And on the way, the Guardian, one of the Guardian is, if you don't remember, a very powerful creature that is connected to Kit and the Guardian of the Dreamlands. He sends a message to Kit in the way, or it sends a message with all these visions of something. Basically, the visions accumulate to telling Kit that he needs to find the Guardian has warned Kit of the Dreamwalker, and that he's looking for them, and that if there's any information you have, to report it. Because it's and in this moment, Kit realizes that, maybe the Dreamwalker isn't good, because now the Guardian's looking for the Dreamwalker. But he knows some other information, that the Dreamwalker was imprisoned beforehand, and it's almost like Kit is stuck in between this family quarrel between the Guardian and the Dreamwalker. So now the Guardian wants him to find the Dreamwalker, which the Guardian seems not to know that he's already encountered him. And then, so basically Kit realizes that, there's actually a lot going on here. So he has some stuff to think about. But eventually they get to Jim Holland's farm, which is this really large 2-storied house with a big farm that kind of circles around everything. And it's a very nice farm compared to everything else. It's very clear that this is probably the most successful farmer here in Maplewood. And whenever they get there to Jim Holland's house, they knock on the door. They're greeted by a maid, and they very quickly meet Jim Holland, and they realize Jim Holland is actually the farmer who had been the first day they got to Maplewood. He was the one who jumped up on the fountain and was preaching about all this stuff going on while the foreboder sang a bad tune. How he was warning everyone that disaster's coming. And it looks like once they get there, they realize that Jim Holland is packing up. This guy is getting out of town. He tells them very quickly that you'd have to be a fool to stay here. Everything's spelling doom. So he's going to escape towards Silifrin while he can, and take as much of his wealth as he can. And they also meet some things like he's worried about the Dreamwalker, to which Newt says that he's related to the Dreamwalker in some ways, which really throws off Jim Holland. Shouldn't have said that, but he did. But they managed to work over, the inconsistencies. And they start to negotiate with Jim Holland, and they manage, without much help from the treasurer, who's usually the best Kit or Pubis. I believe Pubis may have been either really tired or not fully there that day, which is what it is. But the other players could not get him to help really negotiate, so they ended up taking care of it. And after a long and hard-fought negotiation, which they deserved to win, Newt and Hawkins managed to convince Jim Holland to sell a third. Well, he was offering to sell a third of his wealth, and on top of that wealth, they would get all those items on that cart, and they'd also get the cart and the 2 horses, because they convinced him that it would be might as well take the money now, and it'd be more inconvenient to take the items and potentially be robbed or whatever. To which he kind of agreed, but he was pretty hard set on trying to get 50 Rihdar gold for his wealth, which I believe they ended up talking him down to about 45 or so, 48 maybe, which this was shocking to me. This entire session was not planned. Like all this was not planned. Jim Holland, I had Jim Holland made, he was a named NPC already, but I never expected them to ever run into him again. I just happened to name him because I was like, oh, okay, well, it might be important to know the guy who was talking at the fountain. So in my notes I have him, and I didn't know anything about this, so it was all improv. And I never expected, they used the treasury funds that were supposed to be used to negotiate with the tailor in Port Crevice to bring her back. So they willingly spent that money, almost all of it, to these horse wagons, because they've realized now, oh shit, we don't have the time to wait, because they had their callers actually spoke. It says 11 days until expiration, making them realize that we were never given enough time to make it anyway, so they had to rush. So they did this horse and wagon. But what they did in turn, they have basically ensured that they can get there on time, but they don't have the money to really negotiate with the tailor now. So they've kind of settled on they may have to kidnap her. Since they don't have all this money to bribe her with, that's one less good option they can use to get her peacefully. So they basically, this was amazing. The reason I allowed all this, I was like, yeah, I want this to happen. Because to me, it's crazy. They have willingly sacrificed one of the better options. And it's not like they just used a little bit of the money. They used almost all of their negotiation funds. Which, to be fair, they still have the wealth that it's worth in the items. But eventually, they talked to Jim Holland. They realized he's going to Silifrin, and they make this deal, and they go off. And they take all these items back to Quentin Tiest, and they tell him to hold on to the items, but not to sell them. And they kind of... And they've also made a deal with Jim Holland where someone has to work his farms, so they kind of push that off on Quentin Tiest, saying you have to go work his land while he's gone, and you'll make some of the money, which is part of the negotiations. But the things the party doesn't realize is Quentin Tiest and his family are these really poor farmers who have nothing. So all of this going on is really shocking. It's like it's almost like they're in a dream. To them, everything that happened does not make sense. They were paid money, that these people were so nice, and they're on the ground crying because of the 5 silver. And now they come back and hand them all these items that's worth like nearly 50 Rihdar gold and wealth. And they tell them they have jobs set up. It just doesn't make sense to them. But they're also kind of being threatening to Quentin Tiest and his family. So the little kid, I believe it's his daughter. I can't remember them on the spot. Might be a boy. Well, the child ends up asking them if they're with the river rats or if they're like a mafia that's against the river rats, because to them, like, this makes no sense. They must be like a new gang or something trying to set up roots, because the party didn't realize how strange this was to them. This is shocking, and they're basically strong-arming this poor farmer into having to look after their stuff and go work these farms. To be fair, they had a lot of good ideas, though, such as maybe using the potion of plant growth on the crops to make it yield more. So they had a lot of good ideas, but it was a really weird situation, and they kind of pushed it off on him. Quentin Tiest kind of strong-armed into it all, shyly agrees because he's a very shy guy. And they notice that, and then very briefly they go to leave, and they realize that Sleepyhead Rufus is still watching them. They can feel his presence, though he seems to be far away and not really doing much. They just realize that he's always been watched, because they were a little bit worried that the river rats may come steal these items. It might come raid the house at Quentin Tiest. But to some extent, they're like, why would they? Doesn't really matter, because they don't want to take those items with them, which is a good idea. They almost did, they were almost going to take all these items with them to sell in Port Crevice. Whenever they know about, the only tip they have is Datster, the man who is leading all these bandits, robbing all these caravans on this road that had originally raided the caravan that killed the tailor in the first place. So very wisely, they left the stuff there, but they get in this wagon and they start taking off. And they leave everything behind. They're about to go to the gates. But beforehand, they decide to one last time stop at Shelu's General Goods and pick up some medical bandages and stuff for Kira, as she doesn't have any supplies to patch up wounds and such. They go there. While she's there, Kira decides to look at Marcy Shelu one last time. She looks at her, and after some examination, Kira, played by Mo5, finally understands what this disease is because of how it's progressed. She finally realizes this is a disease called sickle rot. It's a respiratory disease, likely very akin to pneumonia in our world, and it's also very contagious and dangerous. And she learns that Marcy Shelu only has like 2 weeks left maybe, and she's going to need some like desperate help. So she could be saved, but there has to be a priority. And Kira, as per normal, seems to be kind of empathetic about it, though I have no idea if her intentions are leaning towards trying to help her later on or what. But she also realizes that this is a very contagious disease. And in that moment, even though this was not my intention, I didn't even really think about it, because she asked, is this contagious? And me being the DM was like, yeah, this is probably contagious, an aerial disease. And then she looks at Billy, and I realize, oh shit, Billy's been taking care of Marcy. So Billy, the temporary shopkeep, is probably infected. And since he's in charge of the general goods store that serves everyone in this town, this disease is probably spreading through the town. And then in that moment, we all kind of realize, the players didn't realize that I realized it, because the players assumed that, oh, I already knew. The players were like, oh yeah, he had this planned because Marcy Shelu has been here for a while. He said, oh yeah, he knew this was going on. But the players realize, oh my god, there might be a really bad illness spreading through this entire town. And then I realize, oh my god, I think I've accidentally just infected this entire town. And I'm like, oh god. Which it made sense, though. The reason I didn't think about it, but the reason it made sense, and the reason Kira particularly thought about it, is because all this information about how doom's coming to Maplewood, the swamps are rising up, there's disasters here, there's these seers and the foreboders coming and spelling doom, Jim Holland, the best farmer, is running out of here. This place is being rumored bad things are going to happen. So it's only natural that, oh, maybe one of the bad things is disease is going to spread. But I'd never thought about that. I was like, oh, that's a good idea, but kind of scary. But after this, with the help of Kira, they can't really do much for Marcy right now until they go to more potions or more supplies in Port Crevice. And she kind of just leaves. She's given some bandages for her help, but she's been able to finally identify the disease. And basically they leave at that point, potentially a bit more interested in Marcy Shelu and that situation. They start heading towards the gates, where they hear the familiar voice of Shlomo Pigrider, who had kind of vanished earlier, arguing with someone about if they're ugly or not. There, the session ends, and, well, that's about it. I thought this was actually probably one of my favorite sessions, because it was all improv, and they had done all the stuff I never expected them to happen. I never expected my players to spend all of that gold on, like, half the wealth, or like a third of the wealth of a farmer. So basically they just bought like a bunch of paintings, vases, maybe a little alcohol, carpets, like a bunch of luxury shit. And it was funny because I had it planned where they wouldn't really need the horses and stuff anyway. But I think it's really interesting that the real answer is they were never supposed to find horses. There were never supposed to be any spare horses in this town. But they ended up managing to find some, because they weren't looking hard enough, and they paid the price for them. So to be fair, I don't think even I can be like upset that they have a wagon and horses now, because the amount of money they had to spend to get that is insane. And it's not even in just like pure cash. It was like they got money back in the terms of items, which who knows if that's better or worse. Anyway, that was about it. If you wish to watch us live, you can every Saturday at 11 a.m. CST at twitch.tv/FoundTheJester. or you can watch the VODs here, or you can keep up with us on Twitter. Sometimes I post updates. Otherwise, I appreciate you all staying tuned, listening to our recaps, watching our VODs and videos, being there when it's live, and just being interested in general. And if you're finding this recently, or if you find this in the future, or perhaps no one ever finds this, and this is me watching this several years from now as an old man or something, looking back on my past, thank you very much for enjoying and doing this. It's been lovely. Anyway, have a lovely day and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.